I'm Rita,
I'm Annie.
and this is our Voice Thread blog. This is going to be new. So today, what we were thinking about talking about was this piece called Susanna and Her Elders by Artemesia Gentileschi. We thought that, like I had heard about her previously, and I heard about the specific painting in which there's like the finished product, and then there's also like an X-ray of the product, and the what's underneath is like much different from the first one. So I'm gonna put a thumbnail in. So you guys can see it, and I think it's really interesting. We're going to talk about it.
Here we go.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think it's very interesting. Obviously, I think one of the big things that limited Artemesia's art was the social factors of, the time she painted this in. And I feel like, maybe if a male artist had painted this kind of violent painting, maybe it would have been more accepted. But I think maybe since it came from her, that's why she had to cover it up. I feel like it's not only the fact that women's art wasn't being, encouraged. It was that when women's art was allowed to happen, it was like kind of stifled and suffocated and made more tame and less authentic to what the woman herself intended.
Right. And I think it's also important to note that, her art was very attributed to like her father, because her father was the painter. And a lot of her paintings are just signed like Gentileschi, and they just attributed it to the dad. But like for most of her adult life, her dad was apparently like incapacitated.
Oh.
So he couldn't really even paint things. So like once like we started carbon dating things and like knowing things about that, then we could figure out like, oh, this is actually Artemesia. And even though like the subject matter of her art is very much like affected by her sexual assault and then and like subsequent things that happened to her. So I think that this is tied in to genius that's tied to men, because I think that's so unfair to have someone's art just attributed to someone who didn't deserve it. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of women artists in the past.
Right. I think it's also relevant to the question we asked yesterday.
Yeah.
That is gender relevant to the artwork and artistic meaning? And I think in this case, it really is.
Yeah.
It so much is. One, because it was, kind of lessened for the purposes of men in the world that said, no, you can't have violent art like that. That's too much. That's too real. And two, because it was such a gendered experience of her feeling. Would you say it's a gendered experience?
I think so.
Because, in a society where women don't have that much control over their bodies or their fiscal matters or really anything. I feel like it's only natural that kind of subjugation seeps through in her art, and then it's kind of like manipulated into not seeming that way.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that how we can attribute work to women artists is if it has feminine themes like that,
Right, that's true.
because I feel like it might be more difficult to try to attribute art to things that aren't necessarily like, oh, I'm a woman, this is a gendered experience. And that might make it, not to say that can happen, but it's much harder, I think.
The more equality happens between men and women, I think the less gendered art is going. But I guess it's not just men and women. Also, like sexual orientation.
I feel like this is like much complicated.
Much more complex.
Wow. All right. So this is a much more complicated topic than just men and women and gendered, non-gendered, because you also have like
we're not in a gender binary.
Yeah. There's whole spectrum, and now do we have to take into account the whole spectrum of things? We do, but then there's race that's a factor, there's class that's a factor. So I think this is harder to explain than just in like a 2-minute vlog.
Right, I think so too. Okay.
So thanks for
tuning in.
Yeah. Hopefully.
This has been Rita and Annie with Rita and Annie.
Yeah. Join us next week. I don't know. Question mark. For more discussions about art
with Rita and Annie.
With Rita and Annie.